Hello and welcome back to Virtually Writing. I'm Scott Hauke from the Century Bureau Public Library, and this is my special guest, Jamie Engel.
Hi.
And today we are going to talk to you about story structure. Story structure. What is story structure and why do we need it?
How much time you have, Scott?
As much time as it takes.
Well, you know, the common story structure is 3 acts. You have your 3-act structure, if you've ever seen a play, and then you have your story arc, your character arc, which should be kind of moving sort of at the same pace. But then you get into a romance and you have that W shape, which I don't know what that means. I just know it's a fact. So look that one up. I don't write romance. But, you know, the story structure is important if you want to write commercial fiction. If you don't want to write commercial fiction, and by that I mean fiction that you might have an agent or an editor or a publishing house pick up, or that you want to publish and really sell to the mainstream market. If you don't want to do that, then you can just write your story. You don't have to worry about the structure in a sense, because you're writing for you. You're writing something that is important to you and speaks to you and that you want to get out on paper. But if you want to write something that's more commercial, that's more sellable, that you might see on one of these shelves behind us one day, or in front of you. For me, I follow a book structure. It's called Save the Cat. It's a screenwriting structure. But I know there's an author in Orlando who wrote Save the Cat Writes a Novel, Jessica Brody, I believe. And this structure is very simple to me because it's like you kind of fill in the spaces of what you need. So your story starts. You really want me to get into this because I'll do it. All right.
Let's go.
Your story starts, and then within Act 1, you're going to have your hero get given their chance to do their mission, and they decline it. And then they have this moment where they kind of go back and forth with that thought process until something forces them into that journey. So if you take something like Hunger Games, Katniss and Gale talk about, we could do this, we could escape, and we could make it. And she's like, I can't, I have my sister and I have my family. And she kind of plays with that idea until she gets to the reaping. Like she said no, but she's still considering the possibility. And we all know when we've reached Act 2, because what's the line in the book? Primrose Everdeen, right? Her sister's name gets called. We know she's going to the games now. There is no way she's going to go, dang, I really liked my sister, that stinks. She's going. So our character has been pushed into Act 2. So within Act 2, this is the part where most writers get stuck. They call it the muddle in the middle. Have you heard that?
Oh,
the muddle in the middle. The reason Act 2 is so difficult is because it's usually the longest portion of your story, and it has a clear midsection, and that's usually the midsection of your book or your short story. So the first part of it is called your fun and games. That's when Spider-Man gets his powers, right? The fun and games is when the hero is testing their new environment. In Hunger Games, Katniss is in the practice? What's that called?
I don't
The
remember.
practice arena? Anyway.
So what you're telling us then is from the 3 parts of our story, inside each of those are more parts.
Oh, yeah, there's like 3 subplots,
Yes.
subspots, #subspots. I just made that up. So the fun and games, there's no fear of a real problem yet. That midpoint, it's all downhill. That's where we hit all our problems. That's where she's in the games, right? And that part leading up to that moment is usually the hardest part to write, because there's nothing really happening. Your character's just sort of discovering who they are. Wizard of Oz, she's gathering her friends and going to the wizard.
City.
Yeah, to the Emerald City. So nothing bad's really happened yet, but there's a little bit along the way. You know, the witch does show up. We've seen her. So once you get to that halfway point, now you kind of go down to the darkest moment of your character's journey. In Hunger Games, that's when has everyone seen it? Okay, good. In Hunger Games, that's when Rue dies, and she's alone. She's lost Peeta. He's turned on her. Rue's dead. She can't save anybody. She can't save herself, and that is the darkest moment of her story. And then what happens? Attention tributes.
Yes.
Right? Tension tributes, 2 from the same district
The
can go
light
home.
comes over the horizon.
Yes, and that pushes us into Act 3. And what's very interesting about Act 3 is your story problem changes. So the whole story, I have to get home, I have to get home, I have to get home, right? When she hits Act 3, now it's we have to get home, we have to get home, we have to get home. In The Wizard of Oz, it's the same for Dorothy. She's trying to get back home, but in Act 3, now she has to get the broomstick. I have to get the broomstick, I have to get the broomstick, right? Her big problem is still there, but her focus in Act 3 has changed. That's a big one. So the problem changes, and I think a lot of stories don't do that. They just keep going toward the final problem, and you can, if you watch movies now, I've ruined it for you, and I apologize. Not really. Because you're going to see all these actions now as you watch the movie, and you're going to be like, that Jamie Ingle, I'm going to buy her book. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so Act 3, we gather the team. That's the first step. And then we go fight the bad guy, and then we either win right away, or we have a major victory that isn't the actual end. So, in Hunger Games, we defeat the monster, but did we really win? She goes home and no,
Well, and
it's not
that's
the
where
same.
you start opening your book up to introduce your next story,
Exactly.
which is part of how story writing works. The story is an organic thing. It doesn't just start and finish.
Right.
Your story can go on, either in your next book or in your reader's mind, because the author never got around to writing that sequel you've been so eagerly waiting for. Popular programming has generated fan fiction,
Yes.
which is where I'm sure a lot of our watchers are at right now, writing stories about their favorite stories that exist. Fan fiction is an inspiration. If you're writing fan fiction about Star Wars,
Right.
Star Trek, Sailor Moon,
Yes.
whatever it was that inspired you, take that and run with it. And then somewhere along the way, you will find that story has become yours. Many of our popular stories today, the Twilight series, started from an author who read J.K. Rowling stories, right?
I think so. And then I know.
She was inspired. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
then I know that the 50 Shades of Yuck came. Sorry. This is a children's thing, right? 50 Shades of Grey came from Twilight because they wanted to push the envelope with the characters.
So each of these stories started out as fan fiction of the stories before it, and then the author developed it into their very own story.
Yeah.
So if you're writing fan fiction, there's nothing wrong with that. The starting steps.
It's actually really good. You know, if you think of an artist, artists don't just start drawing, they trace.
Exactly.
And when you do fan fiction, you're tracing as a writer. When I was a little girl, I used to write stories about Mary Poppins and Jane and Michael, and I would take them on adventures because I knew the world so well and the characters so well that I could take them out of, Cherry Tree Lane and put them into anywhere. And I think that really helped me to develop my storytelling because I was using other people's characters. I didn't have to build the characters and the story and the plot. I just did one thing at a time. So I had the characters, and now I'm just going to develop the story. I'm going to keep them where they are. I'm only going to do the story. And so I think with fan fiction, it just gives you an opportunity to develop each muscle separately.
Exactly.
You don't go to the gym and work out everything at once. That's crazy.
Right. You
yeah,
build
you do
everything
leg
up
day.
slowly. If you're like me and you don't like messing with other people's characters, make your own. Make your own rebels. Make your own Imperial agents and write them into a story. Or make your own rebels and Imperial agents and write them into your own story universe. The world is literally wide open.
Right.
You are in charge of all of this, and you can take this world and make it into whatever you want to be, which is what I personally love so much about writing.
Agreed.
You can go anywhere, do anything. There's no restriction. Nobody there saying, oh, stop, you can't write that. No,
Right, you can
can't
write
write
everything. And I recommend to young writers, take the first page of your favorite book and handwrite it, just like tracing. If you take an artist and they have a piece of art and they trace it and they pull it up and look at it, what they see is their hand created that beautiful art. Yes, it was someone else's, but they can see that their hand actually did it. And it's the same with writing. Take the first page of Harry Potter and handwrite it and show yourself that you can write that well.